Welcome to Trauma Tea and Tangents, the podcast for those of you who feel like you've never fully been seen, for those whose experiences seem to be chronically invalidated, and for those who have been told they are too much and not enough all at the same time. I'm Hannah Guy, a trauma therapist and the owner of Revive Therapy Services based out of Philadelphia. And this podcast is all about the messy, complicated, and very real parts of being human. Mental health, relationships, trauma, healing, and honestly, just basic life shit. You name it, and we will probably talk about it here. Just a little disclaimer for you. This is not therapy. Nobody's going to make you do a body scan or talk about your triggers. Unless you really want to, then go off, queen. And with all of that being said, let's get into it. Hey guys, this is Hannah. Welcome back to Trauma Tea and Tangents. I am here today with Melissa Wadolowski. I'm here today with Melissa Wadolowski. She is a registered dietitian and a certified diabetes educator. And she is here today to talk to us about kind of the intersection between nutrition, mental health, and all that fun stuff. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Hannah. It's very nice to see you.
It's really nice to see you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So before we get into the nitty gritty of it all, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your work, and then we can go from there.
Sure, absolutely. At this point, I have about 13 years of experience as a dietitian, had a number of different jobs, and what I find myself most drawn to is known as outpatient counseling. So really direct one-on-one education and counseling with people. I really love the ability to kind of create that long-term relationship, really work on and tackle issues together, and kind of help see through goals and really help my clients kind of achieve the things they're looking for and get the feedback from their bodies.
Yeah. What drew you to want to become a dietitian?
That's a good question. I initially studied photography in school.
Cool.
And once I finished that, I panicked a little bit. I realized the lifestyle wasn't what I was looking for, and I was always interested in nutrition. I had found a book about vitamins in college that I was reading on the bus, and I just thought it was the most fascinating thing. I was talking to all of my friends about it, and it kind of escalated from there. My friend, I was working in a library at the time. My friend was a librarian, and she kind of pulled up information for programs that were local, and it went from there.
Yeah. Love it. So it's been, you said 13 years? Okay. So we have a good amount of time behind our belt here. And so I think when people think about mental health, people obviously think about mental health therapy, medication management. I know sometimes people think about things like movement and all of that, but I don't know too much about nutrition and its impact on mental health and well-being. I know I overlook that.
Sure. I think it's easy to because the others seem more direct.
Yes.
But really, you're supporting your body through so many different functions. Especially your gut microbiome has been shown to be linked with mood and brain health and overall inflammation levels. It's learning how to support that through things like the right nutrients, adequate fiber, supporting your gut microbiome. That's an important one. But also, a lot of people don't realize how many nutrients your brain needs to function optimally. So the more I learn about different functions in the body, the more I learn about we really need, when we look at food, it's easy just to think about what's on our plate, but really it's information that we're giving our bodies and tools that become the building blocks of what we need.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard so much about your gut microbiome and I don't know too much about it. Can you give me maybe more than the elevator pitch, what it is and how it impacts? I know you mentioned mood, but going more specific into that.
Absolutely. So your gut microbiome refers to the types and amounts of bacteria that live in your GI tract. And that actually influences a lot of things in your body. Your immune system, your inflammation levels, your skin health, your mood, how we're processing and detoxing different molecules such as hormones, environmental toxins. So there's a lot to consider there. Something that I thought was really interesting is about 90% of our serotonin is actually made in the gut.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, a big impact there.
Okay. Are there certain foods that promote more serotonin, or are there foods that get in the way of producing the serotonin you need?
That's a good question. I haven't done as much of a deep dive on that one in particular. But you know what? I welcome the homework. Nutrition is one of those fields that is constantly evolving. And me being a giant nerd, I love to read about all the new research.
Yeah.
So that is definitely something I'm happy to look into.
Yeah. No, I would love to hear back on that. Okay, so you have your gut microbiome. And when we're talking about mood, can we get more into specifics of how that might practically play out? Like if a client was coming to you, what would you see within them related to mental health mood that might be positively or negatively impacted by what they're eating?
There's a number of ways to look at this question. The first one is if someone is struggling with some mental health needs, is really addressing the most pressing matters. Often, when that's the case, someone is struggling to feed themselves, they're struggling to cook. Maybe they're struggling to get the right healthy nutrients in there. Decision fatigue is a thing. So, for someone who's really struggling there, I would search for easy go to options.
Okay.
Maybe picking, 3 easy options for breakfast, lunch, and dinner
Yeah.
that kinda cover all your different food groups.
Yeah.
So when I say different food groups, usually what I try to include at each meal is some type of good quality protein, complex carbohydrate, a healthy fat, and some source of fiber.
Okay. So give me an example of what you, if, and we're talking about someone who's having a hard time feeding themselves
Yeah.
because of depression, because of mental health stuff. What are some practical things, meals that fit those criteria?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes, even before we get to a whole meal, I'll go to what I call a healthy balanced snack format. And one of the first things that I see in a lot of people who are struggling is reaching towards carbohydrates and very heavily processed foods. They're easy, they're satisfying. The tough thing, especially when we're eating more processed carbs, is they don't keep us full. And let's talk for a minute about the blood sugar roller coaster and what happens when we're relying on just those types of foods. So, when we eat a high sugar meal, let's say it's breakfast, and I had a big bowl of Lucky Charms with some skim milk and some orange juice, right? All of those are the types of carbs that break down very quickly and they don't keep us full for very long.
Yeah.
So, our energy and our sugar spike initially. That feels really good, right? That releases endorphins, but it's also increasing inflammation. It's feeding the unhealthy bacteria in my gut that are going to cause more sugar cravings. And if my sugar is going up quickly, it's not going to stay there for very long. So all of a sudden, we're having this drop or low point after eating those foods. And when we get there, that's when we feel tired, cranky, where we get food cravings, and where we're reaching for something to bring us back up quickly. So, that type of reactive eating is really difficult to manage because you're really just trying to, it's hijacked your brain.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're going for like the Lucky Charms because it tastes good, and then you're on that high for a little bit, then you crash, and then you're like, let me reach for the potato chips, or like, let me reach
Right,
for
right.
this other processed food that's probably, I know they like chemically engineer food nowadays to really just
Sure.
get you addicted.
Yeah, I heard something crazy. I was seeing the way that one of the soda companies, who shall not be named,
Yeah.
was talking about their Diet Cola option. And their option was not to create customers, it was to create heavy users.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's scary.
it really is. So they know how that affects people.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's that roller coaster people tend to get caught up in.
Right, right. And so when we're eating reactively like that throughout the day, it's really difficult to manage our cravings, our energy levels, really have that level of foresight. So the way that I like to approach that with patients is really thinking about not only the quality of our carbs, but no carbs alone. They always need a friend. And by pairing them with some of our other foods that break down more slowly and keep us full longer, we can actually keep the blood sugar levels more steady and make that more manageable.
I
Yeah.
like the approach of meeting people where they're at Because I think a lot of people, the idea of eating healthy, there's this misnomer of, okay, I need to cut out all processed foods and all sugars, and I can only be eating vegetables and like chicken and like,
Yeah. Sounds
brown
pretty
rice.
boring.
And to a lot of people, that just is such a big change, the idea of doing that. And then if they're actually able to implement it, it's not sustainable.
Absolutely. I see that a lot. People will take on a plan that's very different from what they're used to. They'll do really well for a little while and ultimately just not be able to follow it and completely rebound in the other direction.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily making these big, huge jumps and leaps into kind of your ideal diet. And when I say diet, I'm not necessarily talking about restriction and like that type of diet, but just the food you're consuming.
Yeah. I think the word diet gets a bad reputation for that reason.
It
I
does.
like to think about it when we talk about any other species and their diet. It literally just means, oh, these are the things that these creatures eat. And so
Yep.
that's how I like to approach it as well.
I like that too. And so it's about creating sustainable change over a long period of time.
Absolutely. And I feel like I'm doing my job well if I make that accessible and easy and understandable for my patients.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't tell you how many patients, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No, go on.
how many patients apologize to me if they have a question. And I have to remind them, like, this is your appointment. I'm not here to hear myself speak.
Yeah. Or just I like meeting them where they're at. So it's not about saying, "Oh, you can't have Lucky Charms." It's, "Okay, what can we add to your breakfast to kind of help?" Would you say, like, reset that sugar high? What did you call it?
The blood sugar roller
Yeah,
coaster.
the blood sugar roller coaster.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
what would you add to that?
Sure. I would say a protein would be a really important factor, especially at breakfast,
Yeah,
because it can help set your metabolic tone for the day.
yeah.
Also, some better quality complex carbs or higher fiber options there. And
Sure.
so often that can look like a substitution, but there's a spectrum. For someone, if the first step is just adding something in to make that better balanced, for them to see, okay, my energy levels are better.
Yeah.
This is improving. Great. And then we work from there. Is there a healthier option? Are there other ideas you've considered? So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We really can work on what does that process look like along the way.
So I also specialize in eating disorders, and I talk a lot about, intuitive eating and listening to your body's, like, hunger and fullness cues. And I think it's really hard because people get caught up in the, this is what I should eat, this is what I shouldn't eat.
You
And if
know,
I eat this food, I'm good. And if I eat that food, I'm bad. This food is good. This food is bad. When the approach I take is kind of, I'm like, food is food. Let's remove morality from it. It does
yeah.
different things.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many people will ask me, is this good or bad? Yes or no, black or white? And I have to explain to them there's so much context.
Yeah.
And our goal is never to be 100% perfect all the time. That's exhausting and it's not sustainable.
Right. Right.
What I usually aim for, and I can't tell you how many patients, in particular, a certain genre of like older women that I've dubbed the Weight Watchers generation,
Yeah. Yep.
that really just giving them that option where they don't have to be perfect all the time. If I'm eating well 90% of the time, when I choose to incorporate treats, it's because I enjoy them and they're worthwhile. And most of the time I'm eating well, but that doesn't mean that food shouldn't be enjoyable at times too.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
also, food is such a big part of who we are as social creatures, too.
Yeah.
It's not people, what's the saying? Like, food should be thought as like of just fuel. And it's like, yes, that is a piece of it. But it's so much more than that. There's like culture in food. It's a way to
Yeah.
connect with people. And so when we are just like limiting it to, this is what you can't eat, don't eat any of this, it feels very restrictive. And I think our bodies don't do well with restriction.
Yeah. And our brains don't either. Something that's interesting about that as well, when people immigrate to a different country or different culture, the last thing that tends to change are their food habits.
Interesting.
Yeah, we learned that a lot from our families. And so that for many people feels very ingrained in who they are, their family life, their upbringing. So it's really difficult to just expect someone to make those sudden and big changes.
Yes. So, how I kind of, and I know I'm not a dietitian, but how I try to reframe dieting, nutrition, all of that is to approach people with this concept of like, we need to get rid of this mindset that we need to stop or restrict or deny yourself of something to be healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big part of that is also people are so surprised when they actually learn how food is acting, what they need certain things for. Something that's really, really big for me. I never love to just give guidelines without reasoning.
Yes, I love that.
For example, I've heard all my life, brush your teeth twice a day. It wasn't until my 20s that someone explained to me, okay, the half life of the bacteria in your mouth is 18 hours. So if you're brushing your teeth twice a day, they're for a specific reason. And
Yes.
that made me accept that so much more easily.
Yes. I am the same way with the trauma work I do. I do more like somatic body based work and
Mm.
it feels very woo woo. And I'm always like, there's always a reason why. Like, I'm not just
Mhm.
making you do X, Y, and Z just for fun or to take deep breaths just for fun. It's like, no, when you're able to take like really deep breaths, it stimulates your vagus nerve. And when that's
Mhm.
stimulated, it turns on your parasympathetic nervous system, which calms you down. So that's why we take
Right,
deep
right.
breaths. Yeah.
And it's so wonderful when you're working with your body.
Yes.
Like, again, when you're thinking about restriction and hunger and satiety, so many people feel like, okay, well, I have to restrict to this tiny portion or this boring, bland food, and it's going to be terrible. And often, one of the first things we talk about is, okay, what are tips that you can use to work with your brain to help you? For example, using a smaller plate or bowl. Even if you're eating that same amount of food on a larger plate, your brain notices that empty space. And it's really difficult to feel, well, how could I be full if my plate's not full?
Yeah.
Right? So that little shift to a smaller plate helps you feel, okay, my plate is full. I'm excited for this meal. And even if you go back for seconds afterwards, it still gives you a place to pause, a
Yes.
place to assess your hunger. And a lot of people don't realize that satiety is not an instantaneous feeling. It takes about 20 minutes after we start eating to start feeling full.
Hmm.
Right. So all of a sudden, if I'm eating quickly, if I'm eating from a large container, I am not letting my body give me that feedback. And often I'm overriding it before I can even get that feedback.
Right. Right. And so it's, and like portion control is always a big thing for people too. And
Um,
I always like to frame it of don't limit yourself to say, oh, I can only have one plate of this. How I approach things is like, oh, yeah, you can have like a serving of this. And then, like, in 10 minutes, if you want more, you can go and get more. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no limitation to this, but let's give your body the opportunity to process and communicate what it needs.
Absolutely. Right. And I tell my patients all the time, like, at that point, if you're still hungry, please go have more food.
Yeah.
Right. That's your body telling you what it needs. But unless we have that time to really sit there and hear what your body's trying to tell you, it's tough to really get those signals.
Yes. I find that a lot of people are not attuned with their body and they don't even really know what fullness feels like
Absolutely.
or like what hunger feels like. Are there any practical things you give people to increase their ability to be attuned to what their body is saying they need?
In that regard, there are a few things. One is really just addressing hydration. A lot of the times, if you're chronically dehydrated, your body may misrepresent that as hunger.
Yes.
So just taking away, making sure it's not that. And then really just paying attention to your meals. A lot of the hyper processed foods, they're really designed to override those signals. They want you not being able to control yourself and your portions. Okay, what can I do to be mindful, to sit down, enjoy my food on purpose, eliminate distraction?
Yes.
Maybe increased excitement, and that can look like a number of things, right? Maybe it's trying out a new food or a new cooking technique.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, joining a CSA where you're getting local produce that helps you feel more connected to the area you live. There's a lot of ways to do it.
Yeah, 100%. Um, I wanted to pick your brain about nutrition and the connection between your nervous system
Sure.
and trauma. I work with a lot of people who have a lot of trauma. And so just the way their brain functions, I feel like it's always in that sympathetic of fight, flight, freeze, the world
Mhm.
isn't safe, the hypervigilance, that raises cortisol levels, right? So, I'm doing the work with these people to help rewire their brain in terms of that. But is there anything, one, you know any of the science related to kind of your nutrition and how that can impact your ability to heal from trauma and kind of get back down to a more regulated state?
Okay, there's a couple ways to approach this. So there are certain nutrients that have been shown to help with calmness. Magnesium is a big mineral for that,
Yeah. So I
often
know there's
found.
a sorry to interrupt. I know there's different types of magnesium. Are you talking about
Yeah.
like magnesium glycinate or which?
So we can do it through foods or we can do it through supplements.
Yeah.
There are so many different pathways in the body that use magnesium. So if we're talking specifically about supplements, I like to recommend the kind that have multiple forms. Because that way your body's not using resources to change them into different forms and they can just be distributed and utilized better. But I always like to go food first. The difficulty with magnesium. So when they did a lot of studies on the nutrient content of foods, that was in the 50s and 60s. And a
Yes.
lot of our soil is more nutrient depleted, right? So
Uh,
it's tougher to get as many minerals. And another important factor, so we use magnesium for a lot of things. Detoxification, for example, if I'm having alcohol, that will increase my magnesium usage. Cortisol production uses a lot more magnesium, so our needs really go up. And one of the challenges that I find, especially if we're relying a lot more on like processed foods, they tend to be much higher in sodium and much lower in other minerals and electrolytes, things like potassium, calcium, magnesium, and there's often an imbalance. So magnesium is one of the supplements that I would recommend for most people.
okay. So to take an actual supplement on top of their just like regular diet.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's like again, I know there's different types of it's like the magnesium glycinate.
Glycinate is a good source. There are so many different kinds, again, like I said. So really looking for a source with, 3 or 5. I've even seen one with up to 10 different sources of magnesium, just to get a little variety there.
Okay.
And taking that at night
Mhm. Oh no,
Taking that
before.
at night is often helpful
Yeah.
because it is really calming. People find often that has a beneficial effect on sleep.
Yeah. I take the only reason why I know this is because I take
Yeah.
magnesium glycinate
Great.
and I really do notice it impacts my sleep in a
That's
good way.
wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. Good.
Okay. So nervous system stuff,
Mhm.
high cortisol, magnesium can be helpful in
Mhm.
supporting your nervous system regulate more. Any
Absolutely.
other foods?
Yeah, so fiber we talked a lot about before. We get fiber from all of our plant foods.
Yeah.
Vegetables, fruits with the skin, whole grains, beans and legumes. So fiber is the part of the plant that we either don't digest or we only partially digest, which sounds really counterintuitive, right? Why
Yeah.
do I want this thing? But it's doing a number of things. It's feeding the healthy bacteria in your gut. And as we know, your microbiome is very crucial.
Yes.
It is directly lowering cholesterol levels by binding with bile from your liver and helping flush out extra cholesterol. It helps us feel full. So, again, speaking to satiety, fiber expands in the stomach. It helps you feel full. It takes longer. Yeah. So, even though we're technically eating more volume, we're actually getting less calories. So, that can be a beneficial thing for people who are worried about being hungry.
Okay. Related to nervous system stuff though,
Mhm.
how does fiber relate to that?
Okay. A number of things. So we were talking about cortisol before.
Yes.
The way that hormone production works in the body, your body makes a master hormone and it kind of gets diverted to be used for other things. Cortisol will steal a lot of that master hormone. So it could mean less of other types of hormones like sex hormones. It could mean that there's now a greater load on your liver to be processing and getting rid of some of those byproducts. So again, the fiber can really help to bind to some of those hormonal byproducts and help flush them out of your body.
Okay. Lovely. Any other foods, minerals, vitamins that are help?
Yeah, omega 3s are really, really helpful in general. So, omega 3s are really healthy types of fatty acids. We still get them at times, but most people eating a standard American diet are getting a very skewed ratio of omega 6s and omega 3s. So, Omega-3s are shown to be very anti-inflammatory, really particularly healthy for brain health, lung health, cholesterol levels, inflammation in general.
Okay. What
And
types of food have what type
we get those from seafood, things like chia seeds, walnuts are all really good sources.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Anything else that sticks out to you that people struggling with mental health can incorporate more into their diet to support their healing?
Yeah, actually, and so this is more of an example of not doing something versus doing something.
Okay.
So when we're very stressed and we're in that fight or flight mode, we're not in our rest or digest mode.
Right.
And that can make it very difficult to absorb and process food. And the process of digestion is very energy expensive. Equally important is that time overnight where we're fasting and your body gets to switch focus. And that's where we're doing a lot of our maintenance and repair. That in particular can be really good for your brain, your gut. So just having an adequate overnight window, right? Leaving a 2 to 3 hour window between eating and bedtime, not feeling rushed to start eating immediately when you wake up, breaking your fast on purpose. Someone may not realize, even if you're not eating physical food, but if you're adding something like sugar to your coffee or your tea in the morning, anytime you start your carbs, you're breaking your fast.
Okay. I don't know much about fasting. I know it's like this whole thing and people get really into it. I guess the first question that comes up for me with that is if you're like, let's just say you're sleeping 7 to 8 hours.
Hmm.
Is there a reason why you would need to fast a couple hours before going to sleep and a couple hours or however long after waking up? Like, what is the function of continuing that when you're already getting 8 hours of fasting?
Yeah, so I would say really anything above 12 hours would be considered like a reasonable sleep like fasting and eating cycle.
Yeah. But what's the function of like why 12 hours?
Yeah, so just really extends those benefits. If we're only fasting for 8 hours and we're eating for 16, like I said, we're not getting that adequate time overnight to do a lot of our repair and our maintenance. Yeah, and especially for your brain. The glymphatic system is kind of what washes through and gets rid of toxins in your brain, and that happens during your sleep as well.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. Melissa, we need to wrap up, but is there anything else you want to throw out there related to anything we've chatted about?
I think in the beginning that you mentioned the fear people have of, changing their habits suddenly, maybe intimidation of a diet. And so I think just challenging the idea of working with a dietitian.
Mhm.
The idea is not that you're going to come in and we're going to expect perfection. We really are good resources. And myself, especially, like my brain is so good at retaining this type of information, pattern recognition. So,
Yeah.
like, I love when people come in and ask questions and challenge me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, really finding like a good and compassionate provider to walk you through that and give you like things that make sense and will show you changes that you can feel.
Right. So it's more highlighting on the fact that not all dietitians expect you to come in and just stick to a very strict and stringent meal plan 100%.
Absolutely. And I don't love very strict meal plans because they work when you're on them. But, if you're out in the world, you may not have access to those foods. And I feel like I haven't done my job well if you don't feel prepared on how to put a meal or snacks
Exactly.
together.
Exactly. Like if it's not able to be applied to all environments or generalized across the board, how successful is it?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Well, Melissa, we need to wrap up. I'm going to put your information in the description below if people want to find you, if they want to work with you. You're in Philadelphia, correct?
That's right. Yes.
Lovely. And do you do online, virtual? Well, that is online.
Yes. At this point, I'm seeing patients virtually with Pro Lifestyle Nutrition.
Lovely. So, yeah, if anyone has any questions about anything we talked about, you can reach out to Melissa. She's going to be the one that has the knowledge here related to these things. And that is all. I will catch you guys next time. And I appreciate all of you for taking the time to sit down and listen. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, Hannah.
Bye.
Thanks for hanging out with me on Trauma Tea and Tangents. If something here made you laugh, cry,
or feel a little bit more seen, then my job here is done. Remember, this isn't therapy, but if you are curious about the real thing, you can check out my practice Revive Therapy services. And if you are wanting more tangents, tea, and truth bombs, make sure to follow, subscribe, or share this with someone who just gets it. Until next time, take care of your nervous system, drink some water, and please stop trying to diagnose your ex.